Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you about some really key conversation points to hit if you find that your ex is coming back and you're thinking about reigniting or rekindling the relationship. So this is actually a follow-up video to a previous video where I talked about some of the different attachment style patterns that are really common bringing back into a relationship with an ex. So like some of the dynamics that basically have to be overcome if a relationship is going to work with an ex, according to some of the different attachment styles, and just some key points overall about why relationships may or may not work and what some deal breakers are. So if you haven't seen that already, please make sure you search that video. I will put it in a card at the end of this video if you can't find it. And basically that video is called Can a Relationship with My Ex Work? So in this video, what we're going to talk about is if you're thinking about doing that, what can you actually do, right? Like if you're thinking about reigniting something, what are some really key points so that you don't just go back down the same old path and repeat the same patterns and end up with the same results, like a breakup again. So we'll go through some of that in this video. And before I dive in, we are still doing our With You promotion. We'll basically be doing this for the length that all the isolation and stuff in the world is going on. The coupon code is With You for 25% off, and I'll put a link in the description box below. And the membership gives you access to everything. So it gives you access to all the ongoing live webinars, social events that we run, and the 40+ pre-recorded courses. So let's talk about the key points here. So first and foremost, if somebody's coming back into your life again, you have to, number one, be very clear ahead of time with your boundaries. So this can't be like, oh yeah, I kind of have feelings, so we'll just jump back into the relationship. If we were to live our life just based on doing whatever our feelings are pulling us to do, then maybe we would be hedonists and we'd spend all of our money, or we would, do whatever we wanted to do in so many different areas that our life might implode. So the key here is to not just go, oh, I still have feelings, so let me just act on that. While our feelings are the best, most infallible feedback messengers that we will ever have, they're not feedback that are always necessarily telling us to just jump on something. Oftentimes they're telling us about individual needs that we have to find healthier ways of meeting. Sometimes our feelings are giving us feedback for painful stories that we're telling ourselves. Our feelings are always feedback, and they do not lie. But that also doesn't mean that we act on every feeling that we have, just to be really explicitly clear. I talk a lot about some of the differences between these things in our emotional mastery and belief reprogramming course inside PDS, if you want to do a deeper dive into that topic. Now, what we want to be able to recognize here is, I have a feeling here, and I have to nurture and care for myself at the same time. Just because I have these feelings doesn't mean I can go back into these painful patterns again. So what boundaries did I not have when I was in that relationship that I might need now? And what boundaries might I need going forward? Like, how fast do you want to jump back into something? Do you need to see certain things change in order to really make a commitment towards something again? So you want to take some time and write out all the different boundaries that are going to be really important to you this time around. And these include your time boundaries, your mental, emotional boundaries, your material boundaries, your sexual boundaries, and your physical boundaries. And you can just take inventory there and see what comes up. And this isn't just, from the past, but also going forward into the future. Number two, what was not working? So what were the painful patterns that you went through? And what wasn't working in those patterns, and how can you do something different this time around? How can you make sure that you don't just go back into those same dynamics all over again? Can you isolate? Like, what painful, every relationship has a primary and a secondary trigger cycle. So for example, like somebody might have a wound of being unheard. Somebody else might have a wound of feeling criticized and feeling like, oh, I'm defective if you criticize me. And so somebody could feel unheard, go to communicate, they feel unheard, be frustrated. The other person could receive that as criticism, and then they pull back as their behavioral coping mechanism to deal with the criticism, which then leaves the other person feeling unheard again, which then gets them to be louder and even more direct and more frustrated, which then re-triggers the criticism again, and you get locked in this vicious cycle. Every relationship has a primary and secondary version of that. You need to know what yours are if you're going to try to figure out why your relationship wasn't working the first time and how it can work this time. So you want to see, like, what were the ways we triggered each other, and how did our behaviors of coping when we were triggered actually be the exact same things that pushed the other person's buttons? What did you need to happen instead? So when there was a trigger cycle, when there were things not working, what did you need? And both of you need to ask yourself that question and ask one another that question. What are your needs or expectations for a relationship overall? Really important discussions to have. And what meaning did you give to painful events? Like, what were your core wounds as a person? What fears kept coming up for you? And how can you show those things and have a dialogue about those things honestly? Because if you don't know one another's needs in advance, if you don't know one another's triggers in advance, boundaries, expectations for what a relationship should look like, if you don't have this information ahead of time, it's just going to show up as an obstacle in real time later on. And so the more clear you can have your conversations about this, the more likely you are to prevent old patterns from just continuing to run over and over again. And be clear if you're going to have this conversation, if you're going to do it properly. Be courageous and put it all out on the table, and don't have any people pleasing stuff come into it just because you're afraid of losing the person or the relationship. If you walk on eggshells while you're having this conversation, you're not really having the conversation, and you are more likely to repeat those old patterns and then have that breakup happen again. So I know it's scary and it can be hard to be vulnerable, but it's so important to have this dialogue. And this isn't just for your ex. This is an important dialogue to have with everybody, right? Like with a new relationship in the dating phase, maybe if you're moving from the dating phase into the honeymoon phase, have these dialogues ahead of time. You are going to save yourself so much time and energy and effort later on. So I hope this makes sense. These are some key points to start off with. Let me know any questions you have in the comments below. Let me know any patterns or trigger cycles you observe within yourself. I would love to hear about them. I love when people share their primary and secondary trigger cycles. I can do a whole video series on that if you guys are interested. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.